Conference on Social Sciences and Humanities, organized by the Department of Social Sciences and Humanities in collaboration with all other departments of the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. These departments every year try to organize international conference on various social issues. The last one we organized on Fourth Industrial Revolution. So keeping in the progression, now this year we have chosen the theme called Bangladesh in 2041, Notions and Narratives of Diversification and Transformation. I thank you all for attending this day-long seminar. We do have honorable guests here. So first I will request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Tanvir Hassan, PhD, to give our welcome remarks. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Minister, Mr. M.A. Mannan, Professor Rehman Subhan, His Excellency, Mr. Charles Whitley, Professor Atiur Rahman, Dr. Rubana Haq, Mr. Jonas van der Klauw, our Trustee Chair of IUB, Mr. Mateen Chaudhary, speakers, panelists, colleagues, viewers, and guests. Assalamu alaikum, namaskar, and a very good afternoon to you all. It is my genuine pleasure to welcome you all to IUB, the Independent University of Bangladesh. I would like to thank Dean Professor Tayyibur Rahman and the organizers from the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences for inviting me to deliver the welcome remarks at this conference titled International Conference on Social Science and Humanities. Again, welcome to you all. I joined IUB only 8 months ago after being away from the country for 34 years. And Bangladesh is now very different from where she was when I left 34 years ago. The economy of Bangladesh is humming under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Bangladesh's economy is growing consistently and is poised to supersede its neighboring economies in the near future. In anticipation of that, the government has laid out an ambitious but commendable plan titled Vision 2041. I'm all for this vision, and we as a country need to prepare for this transition in the best possible way. In this age of Fourth Industrial Revolution, the world is becoming increasingly dependent on data and computer information systems. Every year, we are refining our technology. Many tasks that used to take days now take seconds or minutes. However, people are not wired, excuse the pun, to change or evolve as quickly. Technology will soon take over many jobs, and many jobs will get increasingly technologically inclined in the coming years. Unless educational institutions like IUB prepares its graduates for the future, suddenly the future feels a bit uncertain. Bangladesh, a nation built on the resilience and tenacity of its people, is no stranger to challenges. As we strive to develop our cities and country, I believe that urgent action is also required to invest in and develop our human resources. There is often a knowledge and competency gap between what is required in the job market and the skill sets of the students entering the workforce. How do we mitigate this problem? We need to think about it seriously and collectively. One of the things IUB is doing is starting spring 2022, we will require that all incoming students at IUB will be required to acquire basic computer literacy and, more importantly, coding skill, irrespective of their majors. we are starting this initiative under the banner Coding for All. I call on all educational institutions around the country to revamp their curriculum to keep up with the changing environment of the world, so the graduates of the country become tech savvy, irrespective of their majors, and keep up with the ever-changing global market. Now, as if this crisis wasn't big enough, we also have the climate crisis, which is no longer looming at large. It is very much in our faces. With each year, we are seeing devastating effects of climate change on our own soil, as well as our neighboring countries. Bangladesh is at the precipice of its raging impact. As such, the development of people and our nation must be done in a way that is sustainable in the long run. The future we work so hard on depends on it. The truth is, we don't have all the answers. We don't know what the future looks like either. All we can do is best prepare ourselves and help prepare our fellow members in the society to be as well prepared as we possibly can to embrace the change that's coming and evolving. Now, I would leave it up to the experts to share their knowledge and dissect the overarching issues. I believe that with collective effort, we can help the nation to achieve Vision 2041. Once again, thank you for giving me your time and this opportunity to speak. And I wish the organizers and speakers all the best with today's event. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, sir, for your warm welcoming words and also showing us new pathways how to be inclined with the Vision 2041. Thank you. Now, I'd like to request Professor Rehman Sobhan, the keynote speaker of today's conference, to deliver his speech, and he is the chairman of Center for Policy Dialogue. Rehman Sobhan. Thank you.
Can I be heard by everyone? Am I audible to everyone? Hello?
Yes, sir. We are hearing you. I don't know the inside.
Okay, very well. I can begin then. Thank you very much, IUB, for inviting me to give this keynote address to this very important conference which is being held. I see that you are attending it both in person and it's also virtual. I'm sorry that I cannot be there with you. The conference is essentially addressed to Pathway to 2041. So I'm titling my presentation before you on Bangladesh Transformation and Challenges, the pathway from national liberation to 2041. And essentially, the main focus of my presentation will be to present to you the transformations which have taken place in Bangladesh over the last 50 years, and to see how far we can build on these transformations to sustain the journey towards 2041, which should be projected not merely as a set of quantitative targets, but really as a transformation of the society and opportunities before the people of Bangladesh, what we really call expanding their real freedoms to participate in the changing world order, which will prevail around 2041. Now, the essential focus of my presentation in terms of the transformative processes which have informed our journey so far is to lay emphasis on the remarkable liberation of entrepreneurial talents, which in fact have been unleashed by the liberation of Bangladesh. I will not go into the details and backgrounds. I was privileged to participate in a small way in this process under the leadership of Bangabandhu. And what I would like to begin by pointing out to all of you is that when we essentially set out, in my particular case, my journey would have begun around 1960, which would be 60 years ago, before many of you were born, a few, I imagine, even who may be sitting alongside on the front table. And what was significant was that our journey was a struggle against the frustration of the democratic and economic opportunities of the people of Bangladesh through their association with the Pakistan state. And our struggle was for the realization of self-rule so that we would be able to realize our full potential. This was this underlying premise of the struggle from when we began writing and talking on the subjects. This was the central element in the 6-point Magna Carta laid down by Bangabandhu, which set us on the road to liberation. And the issue which always concerned us is that if you acquired self-rule, would this then have the transformative effect which we assume? Because when you are propagating an idea, you are at the end of the day making certain assumptions, but there is no empirical validation of that idea until this actually happens. So what I find exceedingly satisfactory is that if I now look back after 50 years and simply make a comparison, not with what we were, but actually in comparison with what we were in relation to what is now Pakistan, we have every reason to be satisfied. Because what we have to keep in mind is that on the eve of liberation in 1969-70, Pakistan per capita income was in fact some 60% higher than that of Bangladesh. This was one of the central statistics, which in fact really drove our dialogues and our debates with the Pakistanis, that you have created a society in which the majority population has a per capita income 60% less than yours. And what is exceedingly satisfactory is that if you actually compare per capita incomes today in 2021, you will actually find that Bangladesh's per capita income has in fact overtaken Pakistan's. In fact, we have overtaken Pakistan not just in per capita income, but in virtually every other indicator in which we lag behind. Our GDP has exceeded Pakistan. Our exports are considerably higher than Pakistan. We have reduced levels of poverty to much lower levels. Our human development indicators are far ahead of Pakistan. In all those indicators, you must keep in mind, Pakistan was ahead of us in 1969-70. So if you actually want to get some satisfaction, I see that Minister Mannan is over here. I am happy to be able to speak there when he is here. And I thank also the Vice Chancellor, who is now back in Bangladesh after 34 years. For him too, he would be a witness to transformation. But Mannan, I imagine, was a civil servant around that time, beginning his career. Now, if Mannan was to actually visit Pakistan today, what would please him immensely is that many Pakistanis, when they now talk about their position in the world and they have much to be concerned about, do not say that, well, let us compare ourselves with China or India. They would say, let us try to achieve the levels which have been achieved in Bangladesh today. This should be a legitimate goal for us. And in fact, if you want to go to one place where Bangladesh's achievements are being very positively recognized, you would get much satisfaction from, in fact, any visit to Pakistan, where you are constantly being recognized for the achievements that we have achieved. Now, what I wish to point out to you is that the critical elements which have brought about this transformation need to be recognized by all of us. I will briefly run through this. I have identified a range of about 9 to 10 areas which I will bring to your attention about the main transformation agents during this period. I would begin by, of course, registering my appreciation for the inspirational leadership of Bangladesh to Bangabandhu, who brought us here, and who, more to the point, actually constructed a nation state around which you had the platform on which the transformation could take place. Here again, we were small contributors to that process. Now, once the platform was laid, what were the main elements of the transformation? First, I would like to compliment our farmers. It should be kept in mind that over the course of the last 50 years, Bangladesh has quadrupled its food grain production. And in fact, it has, in a statistical sense, become self-sufficient in food grains, though given the peculiarities of our distribution of income and the functioning of markets, we still continue to import food grains. Again, within agriculture, there have been significant transformations. We have transformed ourselves from a monsoon-dependent agriculture to irrigation-dependent agriculture, which is a huge change because it means that the people and policymakers are now in control of our fortunes and not just the vagaries of the weather. There's enormous transformative diversification which has taken place in the rural economy, not just in the structures of agricultural production, but in diversification into non-crop agriculture, into fisheries, livestock, poultry farming. These have been huge changes. Over and above this, you have in fact seen the growth of small and medium enterprise. In fact, today, the non-farm economy of Bangladesh in the rural areas has actually overtaken the the agricultural GDP. Now, central to all this are two critical elements. The farmers. And the farmers, you must remember, are not large farmers, commercial capitalist farmers, but really subsistence farmers who evolved into small-scale farmers with an enormous capacity for innovation and creativity, and who have been benefited greatly by support from government policies, the remarkable achievements of agricultural research and extension, and have taken advantage of that in every particular area. Rural electrification, rural infrastructure have helped. Secondly, I would like to draw attention to the entrepreneurial revolution. Now, of course, it is conventional when we talk of the entrepreneurial revolution to really associate this with Dr. Rubana Haq. I presume she is here with us, or with Mr. Mateen Chowdhury, who I hope is here with us as well. They have been very remarkable success stories in Bangladesh's entrepreneurial revolution. But what we tend to overlook, and I imagine that since all of you in IUB, a large proportion of you are actually students of business administration, your conception of entrepreneurship would be Rubana Haq and Mr. Mateen Chowdhury. But what I would like to draw your attention to is that there is a much wider constituency of entrepreneurs who have helped to transform Bangladesh. Now, whilst I must immediately recognize that liberated Bangladesh created a genuine entrepreneurial revolution in the conventional sense, so that you had no way to imagine that you would have such a large number of dynamic people emerging with no background or tradition of entrepreneurship. This began with first-generation entrepreneurs who have not only now taken us to the position of the second largest garment exporting industry in the world, but in fact has moved into many areas. I mean, no one would have imagined that we would have in fact had a steel industry, we would have of the size, the pharmaceutical sector. We are now emerging into shipbuilding, into a variety of other areas. So all these should be fully recognized. However, no less important should be the revolution amongst these small, medium entrepreneurs. This again has been quite remarkable and demonstrated huge enterprise and creativity, operating in a much less satisfactory policy environment with many structural disabilities in which they have to operate. Over and above this, I would like to recognize the contribution of the workers themselves. Everyone seems to think that entrepreneurs are made by the managers, the owners, those who live in luxurious houses, who may have homes in Begumpara, who in fact drive BMW cars. But we should never forget the workers who actually have brought this about. And this again has been created by a first-generation working class, particularly our women who came out of the villages, who accepted urbanization, who live in, even today, in most unsatisfactory conditions, and who actually have created our competitiveness because of their relatively low wages compared to other countries in the world with whom they actually compete. And it is they who have adopted to technologies and to the upgradations of technology, which we should actually appreciate. Over and above this, we should really recognize the transformation of other working women, the microcredit revolution. Here again, close to 30 million women in various ways have taken opportunities of the microfinance revolution. It isn't just a supply side problem where in fact the creativity of Professor Yunus and Sir Fazli Hussain Abid have actually responded to the supply side needs and recognized the entrepreneurship of these women, but they have come forward and have made themselves highly creditworthy and have availed of the technological opportunities which have been created for them through a more inclusive system of
Professor Sobhan, if you could please hold off, we are having some technical glitch. We can't hear you. So spare us for a minute or two, please. Your microphone got muted. So, sir,
sorry.
if you turn it on.
I have now turned it on.
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
So where was I cut off? At which point? I see. Anyway, let me just carry on the assumption that
you were talking about the revolution in the microcredit sector, how it was one of the important pillars.
Yeah, that's right. And essentially, it was the entrepreneurship of our women and our less privileged women who, in fact, participated in that. They have, of course, also benefited from educational opportunities. The government has played a big role over here, but they have availed of it, and that is very critical. They have also moved now and graduated upwards into small and medium-sized entrepreneurship. Here again, our financial institutions have been very helpful over here. But again, it has taken entrepreneurship to do that. Then again, you should recognize the revolutionary contribution of our migrants. You must keep in mind, if those of you who remember seeing Pothar Pachali, that Apu's main ambition at that time was to get from his home in the village up to the railway track in order to be able to see the train go by to Kolkata. Now, there is no part of the world in which our migrants have not reached. They've done it with enormous risk-taking. They have, in fact, mortgaged their homes and lands, so that in many ways, the risk-taking capacity of our entrepreneurs, our migrant entrepreneurs, far exceeds the entrepreneurs in the conventional sense of the term, whose risk thresholds tend to be a lot lower because of the financial and other incentives they get. But these people have now become your main foreign exchange earners, have given you your close to $50 billion exchange reserve, and which have given you a healthy opportunity to, in fact, stabilize and maintain an appropriate debt ratio over here. Then again, we should recognize the contribution of the NGOs. They have, in fact, provided an element of social entrepreneurship, which has been hugely transformative. They have created opportunities for linking the educated classes, the middle classes, lower middle classes, have taken them into the rural areas and have given them the opportunity to partner with less privileged sections to, in fact, actually play out a critical role. Our bigger NGOs, like BRAC or institution, which is like Grameen Bank, which is not an NGO, have in fact created the opportunity for critical mass and externalities, so that in fact these have now become major globalized enterprises. In fact, BRAC is the world's largest NGO, just as Grameen Bank is the world's largest microfinance organization. So these are, again, major elements. Now, then, of course, we should recognize the ICT entrepreneurs. I will not dwell on this. You are much more familiar with this aspect of it. And here again, the challenges of our rising generation of ICT entrepreneurs is significant, and their opportunity to move forward enormous. Now, the end result of this process, backed by government contributions to investments in infrastructure, government investment in the transformation in our energy capacities, which should all be appropriately recognized. We have now enjoyed these high levels of growth, which have graduated us beyond the LDC ghetto. And we have, in fact, at this particular stage, significantly reduced poverty, which is very important. We have improved our human development indicators very significantly. As I pointed out, we are definitely ahead of Pakistan in these areas. And we have created the platform within which we could then look forward. Now, what are our challenges? Let me briefly run down before I bring my presentation to a conclusion. Now, sitting here, there is always a temptation to just project numbers and to extrapolate these and to then say that you will then reach a certain statistical platform which will enable you in 2041 to classify yourself as a developed country. But what I would say is that the route to becoming a developed country is really a route for qualitative transformation. And the real challenges which lie ahead are to graduate beyond creating the appropriate investment opportunities, the provision of subsidies, the tax concessions to our recognized entrepreneurs, and to, in fact, liberate the full entrepreneurial potential of this huge constituency of people who constitute the majority of the population and who have actually really made the significant no less a contribution to the achievements that have managed so far. Here, what would be the relevant challenges over here? I would emphasize two elements. Here you need to democratize. I emphasize the word democratize, meaning to say that you need to spread it much more widely. Economic opportunities. And I would emphasize the need to democratize social and political opportunities over here. Now, what would be the elements required? Again, I've written extensively on these subjects. I will just run through this. As far as the democratization of economic opportunities are concerned, you need to visualize significant structural changes. You do not want a situation in which small farmers work, innovate, and then find that their main share of value added is then appropriated by middlemen and trading intermediaries, and then also those who have the opportunity to add value through industry. You need to create opportunities to move them up the value chain, both in terms of marketing as well as in terms of the production process, by giving them opportunities to become partners in that area. You need to address the opportunities which you need to create for your migrants. The notion that hundreds of thousands of people would have to go through these desperate conditions merely to leave the country, to pay high costs, to risk their lives, is in the 21st century an unacceptable arrangement. You need, as a state now, to step forward and to see them as your major assets in investments. And one of the important ways in which to do this is not only to create collective capacity, to facilitate their capacity to move abroad, to create the investments both in their training, in their movements, as also in their healthcare and security when they are abroad, but to also transform them from individual entrepreneurs into collective groups who are exporting services rather than selling individualized labor. There's a literature on this subject, which I will not go into, but I would say that this is the real challenge for the next 20 years. In 2041, you would want to see Bangladesh not as an exporter of individualized migrant labor, but as a major exporter of the services which are collectively provided by these workers. Then again, you would want to address the problem of structural change for your informal sector. The notion that every time there is a crisis such as COVID, the main brunt of this would be borne by your informal sector, who contribute a significant part of your GDP, is again an unacceptable institutional arrangement. Here again, there are a variety of interventions. Some of those I would suggest are the opportunities to create institutions of collective action on the part of service providers to enable them to generate an appropriate, take benefit of externalities, to be able to access markets, to be able to access the financial system. You would want to democratize markets so that, in fact, markets are not monopolized. You constantly, in every area, whether you're talking about trading monopolies, whether you're talking about commodity monopolies, you see that markets don't function over here because they have been captured by elements within the marketing system. Here again, democratized marketing opportunities for the producing sectors of the economy should be our main challenge. As far as workers are concerned, again, those of you who are familiar with my writings will be familiar with the fact that over the next 20 years, you want to change the incentive structures of workers by giving them the opportunities to, in fact, actually participate in the value they create by their hard work and their adaptability, and to, in fact, be given opportunities to become business partners of our entrepreneurs. So that 20 years from now, the the ordinary corporate manufacturing enterprise would not just be one which was owned by the people who have sort of accessed the upper reaches of the financial system, but which would have its workers as a collective group, as their business partners, sharing in the value added in that system. Lastly, I would like to come to the importance of the global system. And here we should keep in mind that in 2041, you will be living in a transformed global economic universe. I looked up some recent projections. Of course, projections vary widely, and I do not necessarily claim that this will be the most scientific or objective, but the latest projection I came across indicated that by 2050, which would be close enough to 2041, 4 of the largest economies in the world, the leading one would be China, number 2 would be India, number 3 would be the United States, and number 4 would be Indonesia. Now, you would notice that 3 out of 4 are Asian countries, and the first 2 are actually neighbors of Bangladesh. So that the huge opportunities available to Bangladesh of having the 2 largest economies in the world as your immediate neighbor and as your proximate neighbor are in fact undreamt of opportunities available to any country. And we, in a way, are at the crossroads.
Excuse me, sir. We will be happy if you can wrap it up by 2-3 minutes.
I'm finishing now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And this will be the opportunities that you have. So this will be a challenge which we have to respond to, how we adjust to this new world order, where the principal markets, the main sources of capital, will all be relocated in our neighborhood, and how we take advantage of that, and how we then participate in the realization of a new international economic order, where the rules of the game are restructured to recognize the new economic realities, and a hitherto Western transatlantic dominated economic system are no longer the rule setters of the international system. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. And my apology, we have to maintain the time strictly. Thank you for your thought-provoking and critical thinking and the speech. This is going to help our student, the new generation, very well in terms of thinking in a different fashion. May I now request our special guest for today, Mr. Johannes van de Klauw, UNHCR representative in Bangladesh. Thank you, sir. Please.
Honorable Minister of Planning of Bangladesh, Vice Chancellor and Dean and Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the International University, Independent University of Bangladesh. Yes, I'm too long. Yes, too tall. His Excellency, Ambassador of the European Union, dear Charles, Head of the Department of the Social Sciences and Humanities of this university, and also the head of the Department of the Global Studies of the university, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to join you here at this table as the representative of the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR here in Bangladesh, to share with you a few assorted reflections on the situation of Rohingya refugees here in the country. And I thank the organizers of this seminar to include this focus on the presence of this population here in Bangladesh from a number of perspectives. I understand the panel discussions have looked at the root causes of this problem, is reflecting on the solutions, notably repatriation, but also has looked and is looking at the presence of this population in the context of the informal economy in the camps, the relationship with the host community, and more largely aspects of what we call human security. we are really deeply grateful that this conference has also this situation and this population in focus. And therefore, it's a privilege for me to share some of my reflections on this dossier with you today. And I would like to start by once again expressing the deep appreciation of the international community to the government and the people of Bangladesh for having done refuge to this population when it needed it most. It has been doing so for decades, and particularly since the large influx in 2017. And I don't want to say this in a gratuitous manner, expressing this appreciation, because in today's world, if we see what's happening elsewhere globally in the world and how states struggle with the arrival of larger groups of refugees, we are the more appreciative and thankful to the people and the government of Bangladesh to have opened the doors to this population until now. But at the same time, their continued presence here poses a number of challenges. Let me also say that the Rohingya population itself, they want to return to Myanmar as soon as they can. They want to return in safety and dignity, in a manner it's voluntary and sustainable. The Rohingya refugees which I meet in the camps during my frequent visits tell me and tell us they want nothing more than to return home again. But of course, they can only do so when the conditions are safe and secure to do so. And that's the whole problem. When can we expect these conditions in Myanmar to be what we call conducive to return? This voluntary and sustainable return, as we all know, requires practical, concrete improvements in the situation in Myanmar, including the lifting of restrictions on freedom of movement, which the people should have in Myanmar, the restoration of their citizenship, the restoration of justice and accountability, and a future in Myanmar where they can enjoy their basic human rights. The UNHCR and other humanitarian agencies, we continue to be present in Myanmar and notably in Rakhine State to help create these conditions, to restore services, to create livelihood opportunities. But we all know that in the end, the solutions are of an eminently political nature. It's all about restoration of rights, citizenship, accountability. And that requires from the international community pressure on Myanmar to achieve a governance structure which guarantees the basic rights and freedoms of the population, of the citizens, of which the Rohingya should be part and parcel. We are now more than 4 years on in the current situation where we have close to 1 million Rohingya refugees living in what is the largest cluster of refugee camps in the world, the most condensed presence of refugees in the world. The COVID pandemic has restricted access of humanitarian workers to this population. We had to suspend or partially suspend our services. And we are only too grateful that now with the lifting of many of the restrictive measures, we have been able again to restore these services and again provide access by the refugees to all the activity services in the camps as it was before the pandemic. At the same time, it's an undeniable fact that the conditions in the camps are under pressure, that there are security concerns. And this, one of the panels is looking at this. These security incidents render the population even more vulnerable and more fragile than they already are. We should also, however, acknowledge, including in public discourse, that the Rohingya refugees in the camps are a law-abiding population. They want nothing more than peace and stability, and that they themselves, notably, are the victims of violence, of crime, of conflict, of even atrocity crimes in Myanmar. We should, if I may, also recognize that the Rohingya in the camps here in Bangladesh show incredible courage, tenacity, resilience. We hear people saying, which is also true, that they're very vulnerable, but they're not only vulnerable. They are strong. They were strong enough to reach safety here. They have been and continue to be strong enough to meet and overcome many challenges of daily camp life, life in exile, life to be cut off from beloved ones back in Myanmar. They show strength in maintaining their vision, their commitment to going home, back again to Myanmar. And we should also recognize, I think here, again, that the Rohingya can do a lot themselves to stay resilient and to avoid to continue to remain dependent on humanitarian aid. Because many of the Rohingya in the camps can rely on their own resources and their strengths if they're given an opportunity. Together with the Bangladeshi host community, they themselves continue to show that reliance and that resilience by having become the backbone of the service delivery in the camps. During the restrictive measures during the pandemic, it was the Rohingyas with the people from the host community who continued to work in the learnings, not in the learning centers, but the homeschooling, who continued to work as community health workers, who organized the COVID vaccination campaigns, and who kept the social services open. So it is, I think, also an opportunity for the humanitarian community to continue to invest in what we call these resilience programs, to invest in continued education of the Rohingya youth, which is half of the total camp population, to continue to invest in their skills developments and in what we call livelihood projects, so that they can have purposeful, meaningful, dignified life. We want to invest in skills which they subsequently can transfer and take with them once they go back to Myanmar to continue their life by not having sat idle the years in the camps. Strengthening the skills would also help to mitigate the security and safety challenges. It would improve the well-being of the Rohingya in the camps. They would have productive, meaningful, dignified lives while they are waiting to go back to Myanmar. And this focus on resilience and skills developments and livelihoods is also to benefit the host community, because they suffer most of the large presence of the refugees, and their services and their work opportunities have been affected by that presence. So we should continue to work with both communities. An important element of our work, and it's in these days of COP26 has been put even more in focus, is to assist Bangladesh and the Rohingya population in coping with the effects of climate change. We have particularly reminded during COP26 that Bangladesh is so vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And an important part of the UNHCR and humanitarian community's response to the Rohingya situation in Bangladesh is precisely to help the refugees and the host community to adapt further to continuous foreseeable effects of climate change and natural disasters, such as the annual recurrence of monsoon and cyclones. We continue to help the refugees, the Rohingya and the host community in Cox's Bazar to reduce the risk of flooding, landslides caused by monsoon storms, by planting fast-growing trees, by stabilized hillsides, by undertake slope stabilization initiatives. We help to avoid further environmental degradation. We help to prepare for future environmental risks through a host of what we call disaster risk reductions initiatives. We all remember that in 2017, when 700,000 Rohingyas were added to the already existing population in Bangladesh, that there was a cutting of the trees and of firewood at the rate of 700 tons a day to meet essential energy needs of the refugees, primarily for cooking. So we have been starting to do reforestation for both the refugees and also the host communities in Cox's Bazar. And we have introduced liquefied petroleum gas as an alternative energy source. And the introduction of the sustainable, affordable access to clean energy by means of LPG has also yielded social cohesion dividends between the refugee and the local host communities. It has helped to reduce tensions related to the dam deforestation. It has also had additional benefits for the host communities. Insofar, their introduction of LPG helped also there to reduce their need for energy. And since women no longer have to go out, including at dark, to cut firewood because they have gas at home, they have been protected from further what we call gender-based violence. And it has also helped to reduce health hazards. I know I've only been given 10 minutes, so we'll stick to the time, but maybe one few sentences on the project of Basanchar, a second refugee location opened by the government, where since last year, the government of Bangladesh has started to relocate what will be ultimately 100,000 Rohingya from the camps, the decongested camps, to Basanchar. It took time for the UN to engage on the island, but we were happy that finally we could sign an agreement with the government of Bangladesh last month. I could do so on behalf of the UN as a representative of UNHCR, a so-called Memorandum of Understanding, which sets out both humanitarian and protection principles, but also the government's policies and priorities of this cooperation and operational presence of the UN on Basanchar. So as of now, we are scaling up not only our presence, but starting the services. We wish to do this around the laudable work of the Bangladeshi NGOs, service providers, which have been on the island since the arrival of the first Rohingyas since last December 2020. The national ownership of this project is important to keep in focus, but we will complement, support, expand the services, the activities commensurate at a level commensurate with the needs of the people we need to serve. It will take some time, but we're doing already the first responses in response to critical needs. It is for us very important, as you know, and for the international community, that the relocation process as such will be maintained to be a voluntary process, that the Rohingyas moving to Basanchar will do so based on their free will and based on an informed choice. We are there to support the government to ensure that, and we also intend to work out with the government, what is also an element of that MOU, that the recognition of movement between the island and the mainland is worked out on a needs basis. What would be the situations which would allow refugees between the Basanchar and the mainland to temporarily visit the camps or the other way around. And finally, we will strive towards good service delivery on the island, commensurate to the needs. And in doing so, also help, and this is an element of your panel, to see a kind of informal economy also on that island, which remains an isolated space so that the refugees, its inhabitants have some cash, can have some meaningful and dignified activities, while again waiting for return to Myanmar, because as much as the presence of the Rohingya in the camps is temporary, as much it should be on Basanchar. So while now the Rohingya crisis enters its 5th year, frustrating as that may for all of us, we cannot lose focus on the need to find solutions for the refugees by creating peace, stability, and justice for them in Myanmar, with their rights fully restored and their living conditions in Rakhine State improved. And we must continue to stand with the Rohingya, as we do with refugees all around the world, to support them and to ensure that their hopes and aspirations for a bright future are kept alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for shedding light on the plights of the Rohingya refugees and the host community condition. We are sorry to inform you that one of our special guests, Dr. Rubana Haq, former president of BGMEA and chairman of Mohammadi Group, she couldn't be with us today because one of her cousin died today, and she is not in a stage to deliver her speech. So our sincere sorrow with her. Next, I'd like to request our special guest, His Excellency Mr. Charles Whitley, Ambassador and Head of the Delegation of the European Union to Bangladesh. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Honourable Minister, Mr. M.A. Manam MP, distinguished Vice Chairman, Dr. Tanvir Hassan, distinguished panelists and representatives, ladies and gentlemen, very happy to be here at UIB today. I haven't been here before, so it's great to see this campus and all the activities that are going on here. It's quite an amazing program that's been put together for these deliberations. So I want to begin with one very short statement, and that is Bangladesh is on the move. The country's graduation to middle income status is a transformative moment in its history. And that graduation is not only symbolic, it brings important opportunities and challenges. In terms of Bangladesh's economic and human development, the figures speak for themselves. When I left Dhaka in 2009, after my first 4-year posting here, things were pretty different. At that time, life expectancy was 67 years in Bangladesh. It now exceeds 72 years. GDP per capita was $702. It now exceeds $2,000. And power generation has more than quadrupled in that 12-year period. So many changes have happened in the 12 years since I last lived here in Dhaka. It's pretty amazing. And relations between the EU and Bangladesh have also evolved dramatically. The EU is Bangladesh's principal trading partner, and Bangladesh has made good use of duty and quota-free access to the European Union market, garnering over a 60% share of total global imports to the EU under the GSP Everything But Arms system. As you may know, a new EU GSP regulation is being prepared, and this will allow LDC countries that graduate from that status to join the GSP Plus program, which is the next most generous GSP scheme after the Everything But Arms scheme. But this will be a challenging and elaborate process. Our policy and funding partnership with Bangladesh supports action in numerous fields, from climate change to public finance management, from education and women's empowerment to village courts. Working together on the green transition will be one of our major shared concerns in the coming years. And the EU furnishes direct support to a wide range of civil society organizations here, and will continue to deliver substantial humanitarian and other assistance as Bangladesh grapples with the unprecedented challenges posed by hosting over 1 million Rohingya refugees that Johannes covered so eloquently. People-to-people ties are an essential aspect of EU-Bangladesh relations, and a good example, which is particularly relevant being here at the Independent University, is the Erasmus Plus scheme, which is granting scholarships every year to students from Bangladesh and around the world. And actually, Bangladesh is one of the main beneficiaries of that scheme globally. We have 139 recipients who are undertaking Masters of Art courses in 2021 to 22. Human rights and democracy are fundamental to the EU's relations with all countries, and we will continue to engage closely with the government of Bangladesh and civil society in that sphere. In the wider world, the EU and Bangladesh have much in common, including our respective commitment to UN peacekeeping, faith in multilateral solutions to global problems, and we see what's happening in Glasgow now and the big role that Bangladesh and the EU are playing there to try to find an agreement, and engagement on all aspects of climate change. We're now moving into new areas of cooperation with Bangladesh, reflecting the fact that after almost 50 years, we'll celebrate our 50th anniversary of relations in 2023, actually, but our partnership is evolving and will continue to evolve. At the high-level diplomatic consultations that just took place in Brussels on 26 October, we agreed to step up cooperation on climate change, digitalization, connectivity, and security, taking into account the new EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. This speaks to a rich relationship that must also continue to rest on shared values. Bangladesh is indeed on the move. The EU is also on the move, and we will remain a steadfast partner as Bangladesh transforms in the years leading up to the country's 70th anniversary in 2041. So I wish the university and the organizers well with this very extensive and interesting program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. You're right, Bangladesh is on the move and Bangladesh will be on the move. Now, next, we do have an online speech by our special guest, Professor Atiur Rahman. He is the Honorary Professor of the Department of Development Studies, University of Dhaka, and Executive Chairman of Unnayan Samonnoy Sangstha. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair of this very significant conference session, inaugural session. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Mannan, and of course, my Reverend Teacher, the keynote speaker, Professor Rahman Subhan, Excellencies, other guests, and ladies and gentlemen. I really want to congratulate IUB and the conference organizers for organizing this conference at a very strategic moment. Bangladesh is now celebrating its 50 years. And also we are almost completing the celebration of the birth centenary of Father of the Nation. Judging by history, 50 years is not a long time. But as Professor Rahman Subhan and others have already indicated, the Bangladesh development journey in this short period, I would say 50 years, is awesome, simply stunning. When Bangladesh began its sprint for development in 1972, under the leadership of the Father of the Nation, Bangabandhu, it just started an economy with an economy of $8 billion. Can you imagine what is the size of today's economy? It's $355 billion, right, at the moment. In 1972, the per capita income was only about $93. Now, as you all know, it has become, almost 2,500 US dollars. Starting from a minus 12% growth, the new government led by Bangabandhu really put the country on the highway of development, starting from a narrow rail of Metropath or the rural road. Defying today's crisis, the pandemic and the climate change, the Bangladesh has been doing pretty well. When during the last fiscal year, when the world shrank at 3.5%, Bangladesh still grew at 4%. And my own hunch is that in this fiscal, Bangladesh will be growing more than 7%. Even the organizations, international organizations like IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and also Stanchart Research all project, the Bangladesh will be growing almost 7%. And my own hunch is that the Bangladesh own projection of 7.2% is very much feasible, and we will be looking forward to that. Bangabandhu, as my teacher has already put the country on a right track, emphasizing on agriculture, industry, education, the family planning at those days, and the country was moving in the right direction. But unfortunately, as you know, there was a blow by the traitors, and that prosperous journey was suddenly halted on 15th of August. But by then, the economic, after his departure, the economy really lost its rudder, and it took nearly 13 years to bring back the economy to the level he left. From $273 per capita, it dropped to $138 next year, 76, then to $128, and it took up to 1988 to become $270 or so. So leadership matters, and this is also visible from the current leadership. As you can see, the Bangladesh, as His Excellencies were telling, Bangladesh is moving on and moving pretty fast, overcoming all the adversities under the far-sighted leadership of our Prime Minister. And we are getting all kinds of, very positive and optimistic news from all around the world. Professor Jeffrey Sachs, the SDG advisor to the UN Secretary General and director of the Earth Institute of Columbia University, tells that Bangladesh was doing the best in terms of implementing SDGs. And for that matter, he called our Prime Minister jewel in the crown of the day. Besides UN, others have also been telling us similar stories. I don't want to go deeper into that. I can only tell you that, not only Bangladesh has been really achieving the best per capita nominal growth over the last decade or so, the Bangladesh is poised to maintain that trend because of some inner strength. What is that inner strength? Bangladesh growth really originates mostly from the domestic consumption and demand. 63% of its growth really comes from domestic sources. And again, Bangladesh agriculture has been the mainstay of Bangladesh economy and has been putting a strong base for growth. As Professor Subhan has said, 60% of the rural economy really is in the non-farm sector, getting the synergy from the agricultural sector. And no doubt the global hunger index, which we just got it, Bangladesh has been doing far better. The score is 19.5, which has increased, and it's much better than India and Pakistan. Over the last 9 years or so, this index, the global human hunger index, improved by 25%. The Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, a British research tank, thinks that by 2020, Bangladesh will be the 34th largest economy of the world. And the IMF thinks Bangladesh economy will be about $517 billion in 2026. The gist of the perspective plan of Bangladesh, which covers the period of 21 to 41, Bangladesh to be a developed country by then, that per capita income is expected to grow $12,000 plus, and the growth rate will be 9% plus. The inflation will be below 5%. The population growth will be around 1%. The savings ratio with the GDP will be 37.7%. The investment 40.8%, private sector investment 31%, and direct FDI 2.2%, export growth at 11%. I can go on. These are all very, very positive news. The foreign exchange reserves will be more than 6.3 months worth of cost. It's already 8 months. So I thought this current momentum of economic growth, if can be maintained, I'm sure the vision for 2041 is feasible, and we will be moving in that directions. Bangladesh has really moved in the right direction by investing on mega projects, which are both growth multiplier and employment multiplier. And the Padma Bridge, the story, will alone add 1.2% of GDP from next year. So I thought Bangladesh is in the right directions and moving towards to become a prosperous, developed country by 2041. The challenges have been very well articulated by Professor Subhan, so I don't want to go deep into that. I just want to, now put in a succinct way the ways ahead. Where should we put our emphasis given all our strengths and weaknesses? I thought that will also indicate some of the challenges that we will have to overcome. I think looking forward, we need to continue our transformative development journey, which ought to be focusing on high growth and also inclusive. The growth should be both high and inclusive. Secondly, prioritizing on domestic consumption and demand, and at the same time, collaborative to promote export-led growth, which we are doing so well. Thirdly, respecting our own culture and openness to innovations, and at the same time remaining globalized. So these are the main focus. Then now we can be I can pinpoint on the how to move ahead. Number one, the future will be all about digitization and e-commerce. So as Professor Subhan said, we got to support ICT entrepreneurs and digital entrepreneurs. Secondly, SMEs and the related innovations will be the key to macroeconomic success. It has been going on, and we got to support the women entrepreneurs in the process and continue developmental role of the central bank, which has played a very interesting role in taking the money to the grassroots. The role of the private sector will be remaining pivotal in our attaining inclusive growth. So support the export sector and
Sir, please pardon me. You have 2 minutes more to finish your speech.
I'll be just numbering or pointing out our ways ahead. Link higher education with industry and invest in people, invest in human capital, skills development to improve productivity, continue support for artificial intelligence, robotics, informatics, big data management in terms of Internet of Things, biotechnologies, bioinformatics. Continue to modernize and mechanize agriculture. Make smart urbanization a priority issue. That will decide the developed country status. And also, realize as much potential as possible from the regional trade and make Bangladesh a hub for the further integration into the local, regional, and global value chains. Emphasize on tourism and aviation and make Bangladesh a gateway to Southeast Asia and China if possible. Continue to support infrastructures, particularly mega projects for growth and employment multiplication, and also support software and digital services and support the high-tech parks, which we are already doing. And finally, our final aim will be to get an inclusive green Bangladesh. So, continue to support the ultimate goal of becoming green and inclusive as we are already in. You have seen our smart negotiation in Glasgow, that is our aspiration. So continue to support our aspirational journey to dream more and become more. Let me quote our Honorable Prime Minister,
Your microphone is mute, sir, probably.
Just I'll be finishing with a small quote from our Prime Minister, who has become an icon for green growth and inclusive growth. She said on the 28th September in an article on the Financial Times that climate change, pandemics, and the destruction of nature are common threats. They should unite us in working towards a common solution, a cleaner, greener, and safer world. And let me echo her in bringing all the stakeholders, be it the state, the non-state, or the development partners, working together in realizing that dream of Bangladesh by 2041. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for giving us a statistical tour over the growth of Bangladesh. Thank you. Next, we do have today's chief guest, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Planning, M.A. Mannan, MP. Please, sir. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Shubho Bikel. Let me begin by thanking IUB for asking me here this afternoon to join this very important, very significant, very enjoyable session on a matter of great concern to all of us, a matter of direct concern to us in the government. But before that, I have to thank the chair of the session, Professor Tanveer Hassan. I have to thank other gentlemen who have been here with me. I have to thank Mr. Mateen Chaudhary, chair of the board of the trustees, a very erudite businessman. I met him briefly this morning. I have my high regards for him. Of course, I have to thank Mr. Charles Whiteley, who represents the EU in Bangladesh as its ambassador. Another gentleman of key concern to us at this moment, UNHCR country chief, Johannes van der Klauwe, if I'm near about. Thank you very much. And then, of course, I have Professor Tayyibur Rahman, who is head of this section of academics here. And of course, above all, our keynote speaker, our leading light of the intellectual society in Bangladesh, Professor Rahman Subhan, who did make a direct contribution to our great war of liberation. Incidentally, who worked in the place where I work now in the initial days of our independence as a member of the Planning Commission. So I thank you for his very rich introductory speech. Professor Atiu Rahman, who just spoke, good friend of ours, and for his very graphic description of the development route that this country has been taking in the recent days. I'm also grateful for the comments made by the two gentlemen from the diplomatic community. Particularly the EU ambassador said that EU was moving, we were moving also. Bangladesh was moving, EU was moving. That's great. Good partners. We enjoy your company. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the matter under discussion is very detailed, very deep, and I don't have the knowledge, nor the time. You can't have the patience to be going over all the details. All I can say is that the last few years, particularly the last decade or so, since 2009-10, there has been a miraculous change in this country, as has been testified and described by almost everyone, including the great sages of World Bank and ADB and IMF and others. Some have called it a miracle. Someone just said, amazing, the EU ambassador here. He was here in 2009. Now he's back again as chief of the mission. Amazing. To a native-born Bangladeshi or Bengali, it's more than amazement. This country of 1,000 years colonization by all kinds of people from all parts of the world. In droves they came in their number, stayed, took away, lived, whatnot. But that's over now. And of course, I have to again recognize our great liberation fighters, the people who gave their life for our freedom today. Father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, his clarion call is rising to the occasion at the correct moment. And our peasants, our fathers, forefathers, our dead generation, workers, ordinary people, ordinary Bengalis who stood up with their sticks and hoes and fought the liberation war. It's an abiding debt for all of us, which we have to keep on trying to pay and pay and pay. We'll never be out of this. So I pay my respects to our liberation fighters too. Incidentally, it was very interesting to see from your papers, 1/4 of the organizers of this great institution, IUB, 1/4 roughly were freedom fighters. That's a great honor. I really congratulate you. That's a great honor. Mr. Mateen Chaudhary, you yourself, Bir Mukti Juddha, I can't translate it into English. Bir Mukti Juddha, how can I say it in English? I don't know. There's no translation. Bir Mukti Juddha. So salute to all of you. Thank you. Narrative and diversification. Narrative of diversification transformation, 2041. The year we look forward. The goal we have set up. Goal our Prime Minister has set for herself. For this current level of, current state of transformation to reach its logical, sequential conclusion, where we can say that we are, well, developed country is something really I don't want to mention. We are a country on our own. We are a country which lives on equal terms with other humanities. Well, we will be a country when we will have our own strength recognized and we will have our own strength used in our further development. That sort of level will reach by 2041. As the number game says, as the numbers say, it seems it's possible, quite possible. Dr. Atiur Rahman in his numbers, others in their figures. Prediction is very good, very bright, and very dependable. So we in the government at this moment, we take pride. We take pride that this has happened during our time. These last 10, 11 years, when Sheikh Hasina, our Prime Minister, the brave person with strong common sense, the person committed to this land, to these people. This has been the period when the transformation has taken place. You can see it for yourself, visible transformation all over. So we set this goal of 41. We created a vision. Here again, being a true Bengali, I'm led to emotions. We are a people with a lot of visions. Sonar Bangla. Again, can't be translated into English or any language. We have been dreaming of a Sonar Bangla, a golden Bengal. Of yore, we don't know when it was. But we have been dreaming, all our forefathers, all generations have been dreaming of a golden Bengal, Sonar Bangla. Now it is within our reach. But that's not important. It's not Sonar Bangla as such that we are looking forward. We want a humanized Bangla, a civilized Bangla, a modernized Bangla, a Bangla which lives on science and technology and which shares its everything with the humanity at large on an equal footing. That kind of Bangla or that kind of Bangladesh or Bengal, whatever way you would like to say, is now within our reach. As in the nature, many of us who read in our school days, nature prospers or evolves through diversification. A species diversifies, survives. A species inbreeds, doesn't diversify, dies out. That is the great lesson of evolution. Here again, economy in a way would have to live by diversification. And that is one major point in our economy at this moment. Everyone knows that transformation has been led by our garments or RMG sector, which is not an outlier. It has happened all through the industrial transformation of the last 100 years or so. The countries who have made it to the industrial level initially started with yarns and clothes and garments. We are experiencing the same here at this moment. But from garments to others, to beyond, we have to evolve. And evolution has its own speed. It will happen in the margins. It will happen at the turning points, which is quietly taking place in our country too. Our agriculture is doing great. It's diversifying. It's moved out of subsistence level. It's modernizing itself. And we have introduced technology into our ancient agriculture too. So there we have a prospect of diversification. Our pharmaceuticals, our agribusiness, in so many other ways, in so many other sectors, changes are taking place quietly, changes are taking place sustainably, which we think will enable us to keep our garments, but at the same time widen our scope so that other areas of activities can come in and push us forward. So that kind of a diversification process is now going on at this moment. But all of this is led by what? Our humans, ordinary people, our farmers, our workers, our very huge informal sector, and of course, technology. Technology of which we are still not in the mainstream, but we have picked up digital technology to be the driver of our transformation, as you all know. And here, the young people here of this great institution, are so many universities and colleges all over the country. Here, we put our stake. Here, we challenge these young people. Here, whatever little resources we have, we give them to build their future. So digital Bangladesh is another dream of ours, like Sonar Bangla. Now we also call it digital Bangla. Just for you now to transform. It's possible, it's visible, it's happening all over, everywhere. So ladies and gentlemen, this march from 71 to 41, just 20 more years, has been a fantastic experience. As a political man, which when we started in 71, 72, sages, very wise people, some called us bottomless baskets. Some called us hopeless. Some even said, if Bangladesh can make it, anybody else can make it in the world. Extreme statements. These are all falsified by our Bay people. They were not true. They were friends. I have no question on that. They were friends, but they were misled. They miscalculated our energy, our latent energy, which is visible in our younger generations now. So let us all put our hands together in our hearts and home, in our rivers, in our houses and bills, in our roads, in our institutions, like in the IUB here, and your neighbors there, and beyond, all over. Every one of us, the time for us to join the big, great party of diversification, party of transformation, party of change for Bangladesh, for Bengalis. So it's a great opportunity for me to be among you this morning, this afternoon, and to be able to say a few words as a senior citizen of this country, that as we live, my generation lives, we live with hope. My father did not die with hope. My grandfather did not die with hope. Now I live this country, this soil, this land with hope that yes, dark days are over. we will have better days now. If you kindly allow me, ladies and gentlemen, I'll shift to Bangla now for a little statement with just to satisfy my own internal emotion. নানান দেশে নানান ভাষা বিনে সদে কিছু ভাষা মেটে কি মনের আশা আমাদের কবি বলছিলেন। আপনারা যারা বিশেষ করে আমার গণমাধ্যম বন্ধুগণ আছেন, আপনাদের জন্য বলছি এই কথাটা, যে পরিবর্তনটা হচ্ছে এখন, এটার কারা পরিচালক এটা আমাদের মনে রাখতে হবে। কারা করছে, না হলে কিন্তু ভুল জায়গায় বার্তা যাবে। কারা করছে? সাধারণ মানুষ, সেই সকল অপরিচিত মানুষ যারা গ্রামে গঞ্জে নদী বন্দরে হাওরে কাজ করে, মাঠে কলকারখানায় যারা রিক্সা চালায়, ভ্যান গাড়ি চালায়, নৌকা বায় সদরঘাটে, তারা এই পরিবর্তনের অগ্রদূত। আরো কোটিখানেক মানুষ যারা মধ্যপ্রাচ্যে, ইউরোপে, আমেরিকায়, দূর প্রাচ্যে, সারা বিশ্বে কোথায় নেই কাজ করছে, তারা এই পরিবর্তনের অগ্রদূত। ঠিক যেমন ৭১ সালে বা তার আগে পরিবর্তনের যুদ্ধের সংগ্রামের রক্তের অগ্রদূত কারা ছিল? আমাদের পূর্বপুরুষেরা, আমাদের বাবা মায়েরা, আমাদের বোনেরা, ভাইয়েরা, যারা হাজারে হাজারে লাখে লাখে অপরিচিত জায়গায় প্রাণ দিয়েছে। তাদের নাম নেই, ঠিকানা নেই, কার ছেলে কোথায় বাড়ি কেউ জানে না। সেই সকল বীর পুরুষেরা, বীর নারীরা, তাদের প্রতি আমাদের শ্রদ্ধা, চিরন্তন শ্রদ্ধা এবং কৃতজ্ঞতা আমাদের ধরে রাখতে হবে। বর্তমান জেনারেশনে যারা আছে, তোমরা এখানে শিক্ষার্থীবৃন্দ, তোমাদের কাছে এই আমার বার্তা, রাজনৈতিক বার্তা নয়, আবেগী বার্তা। আমাদের এই বীর পুরুষদেরকে স্মরণ করতে হবে এবং বর্তমানে যে জোয়ার এসেছে আমাদের অর্থনীতিতে, আমাদের সমাজে, সেই জোয়ারটা ধরে রাখতে হবে। সেই জোয়ারের জন্য প্রয়োজন জাতীয় ঐক্য। যে ঐক্য আমাদের ৭১ সালে আমাদেরকে সোনালী ফসল দিয়েছিল, এনে রক্তের বিনিময়ে হলেও আমরা স্বাধীনতা অর্জন করেছিলাম, পিতৃভূমিকে পুনরুদ্ধার করেছিলাম। আমাদের হাতে প্রথমবারের মধ্যে পেয়েছিলাম ১০০০ বছর পরে, দখলের পরে ১০০০ বছর বিদেশিদের দখলে ছিল। ঠিক সেইভাবে এখন এই অর্থনীতিকে পুনরায় উচ্চ মাত্রা নিয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য, ৪১-এর স্বপ্ন পূরণের জন্য আমাদের সকলকে একসঙ্গে মিলেমিশে কাজ করতে হবে। তোমাদের প্রতি আমার আহ্বান। Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished Vice Chancellor and other guests, and distinguished diplomats, I thank you for your patience and have a good day. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu.
স্যার, সশ্রদ্ধ কৃতজ্ঞতা জ্ঞাপন করছি আপনার বক্তব্যের প্রতি। আমি আপনাকে আর একটু জানাতে চাই, আপনি খুশি হবেন জেনে, আমাদের ক্লাব পার্টনার যারা আছে আইবিতে, বিভিন্ন ক্লাব, তারা সকলেই প্রচেষ্টা চালাচ্ছে যে সাধারণ মানুষদেরকে সাথে নিয়ে কি করে উন্নয়ন অগ্রযাত্রায় শরিক হওয়া যায়। সো আই কংগ্রাচুলেট আওয়ার ক্লাব পার্টনার্স, Anthropology Club, Sociology Club and Global Gatekeepers. Now we do have our trustee chairman, Motin Chaudhary, sir. Please, sir, deliver your speech. Thank you, sir.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It is indeed a great pleasure to have all of us here meeting post-COVID. We've been missing these opportunities for a long time. I'm still missing my students because of COVID restrictions. We can't get a lot of people in, so we have to restrict our numbers, but I wish that we get over this very soon. I would like to thank the galaxy of people that we have here today. We have our intellectuals, we have foreign diplomats, we have the government, everybody coming together to be present in this event. IUB is a platform for all of us to get together, exchange ideas. So we are here for receiving all sorts. We will differ, we will have different opinions, but we would like to keep this a place where we get everyone to express their views and we take a decision. So thank you all for making this possible, because all of your views are something that we value, and we will get on from there. Students are the ones who are going to take this country forward, and teachers, of course. I'm sorry, not because all of you are also still very young. Now, when all these speakers spoke, we spoke about what we came through in the last 50 years. And the sessions that you have is you're going to give us how do we get to our next stage. So the next stage has to come from our students and our teachers, the younger generation. So you have a platform here. You have, as the speakers have already confirmed to you, that you have a momentum going. Don't let this momentum, don't let this go. Let us have this momentum, build on this momentum, and move forward so that you can stand as a very, very proud nation in 2041, I think, 2041. So let's move that on and do it, and IUB will support. IUB stands to take this country forward and follows all the policies that the country stands for: nationalism, secularism, freedom, etc. And we also want to encourage people who are deprived. The reason that we fought the war in 71 was that, as Professor Rahman Sobhan Atir Rahman described, was the differences between people. Now, we don't want that to be created in this country. Therefore, you'll be happy to hear that 18% of our revenue we've given as a scholarship to encourage broad-based participation of students into the thing. Because if IUB is teaching the elites, it doesn't achieve the objectives of the founders. We want it to be broad-based. We want it to be privileged, underprivileged. We want merit to come. So I also encourage the teachers that you please help them out. Underprivileged families have shortcomings. And as teachers, if we don't recognize that, we will not have inclusive growth. So yes, there will be shortcomings, but we have to be tolerant, we have to be helpful, we have to support them. So that is really, really very, very important for us as a university. And all of you as noble teachers, I don't see many students here. I understand that the accommodation is not there, but with the teachers I would address that please take the university. You have all the freedom. We assure you freedom. We assure you that you do what you want, you do as a university, but we want you to be fair and we want you to take everybody together. Please don't take the best ones and move, because it's our duty to take the ones who are behind to bring them forward. Otherwise we're not doing our job. I mean, if you're just taking the best crop and turning them around, really that's not why we are all here. IUB is also having various goals. One of the goals is it has to be linked with community. And in that effort, you'll be very pleased to hear that this year we have international funding of $5 million.
$3.2 billion.
I thought you were going to get to 5 million. I mean, we have to get to 5 million. We got another 3 months left. Huh? So international funding, which is not so easy for a new entity to do, but we are there. We've also done 5 crore of local funding. So what we are trying to say here is that we want to be an institution of the community. We don't want to be an institution like a school. We take a fee and we play. No, we want community to come in, community to have confidence in us, invest into us. So that is very, very important that we are a community-based university. We are getting a globally recognized university where global organizations would put money in us. And the proudest moment of IUB was in the last 2 weeks. Our professor, Professor Salimul Haq, is in the panel of COP26 making all the policies. So if you've watched BBC, you have seen Professor Salimul Haq, Independent University, Bangladesh. That's an honor. That is an honor that somebody from Bangladesh, he is hitting the global headlines. He had an editorial in the Daily Telegraph in London, Salimul Haq, our Bangladeshi professor from IUB. So he had an editorial in Daily Telegraph. So IUB is going beyond boundaries. And I encourage all of you young, look here, over there, young lady. No, the one behind you was won the telephone. Yes, get behind, get working, be Salimul Haqs again. We want all of you to become Salimul Haq. You have to get into the World Forum. You have to aim to get to the World Forum. Let's not just sit here and say that you're going to do this. We are a country which has done a lot of development. We've proven ourselves. We need to prove further, and your generation really needs to go. So I again thank our guests very much for encouraging us and supporting us, and the organizers for organizing this. And I look forward to a very good 2041, even if I'm not there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Inshallah, you will be with us in 2041. Now, last but not the least, our Dean, sir, Dean of School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, will give his vote of thanks. Thank you, sir.
Respected chair of this session, distinguished guests, dignitaries, faculties, students, journalists, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum to you all. Once derided as an international basket case, following its emergence as an independent nation in 1971, Bangladesh has made remarkable strides in development and poverty reduction over the last 5 decades. It has become a development model for other developing nations. It has demonstrated its ability to grow and develop that has outpaced its South Asian neighbors, including India, on several economic and social development parameters. It is today one of the fastest developing countries in Asia, and it is transitioning to a middle income country. It intends to become a developed nation by 2041, yet the country is in many ways a paradox of success combined with other challenges such as climate change, environmental degradation, population pressure, Rohingya refugees, automation and its threat to employment, skilled human resources, governance deficit, and so on. Hence, organizing an international conference titled Bangladesh in 2041, Notions and Narratives of Diversification and Transformation by IUB is a timely one. 55 papers on multidimensional issues of development will be presented in today's conference by scholars, policymakers, development practitioners from home and abroad. The scope of this conference provides a unique meeting ground for scholars, policymakers, students, and development practitioners from home and abroad to force emerging ideas and thoughts and move forward in ever-changing and multidimensional landscape of development. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, I want to extend my warmest welcome to all the participants coming to IUB to attend the conference. I take this opportunity to thank all distinguished invited speakers for their kind presence and contribution to the conference. I would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to our chief guest, Mr. M.A. Mannan MP, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Planning, for his kind presence amid busy schedule and his contribution to the conference. Sir, you have been a continuous source of inspiration for us. Our appreciation and gratitude go to Professor Rehman Sobhan, Chairman CPD, and one of the living legends and a top public intellectual of the country. We are truly honored to have you, sir, among us, and we are inspired by your speech. I would also like to record my appreciation and thanks to the panel of very, very distinguished special guests, namely Professor Atiur Rahman, His Excellency Mr. Charles Whitley, Mr. Johannes van der Klaus, and Dr. Rubana Hawk for their presence and contribution. We are really thankful to you for your time, your contribution, and your valuable speech. We owe to IUB top management, particularly the Chair BOT, Mr. M.A. Matin Chowdhury, and our respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Tanvir Hassan, for their transforming leadership, continuous support, and encouragement for advancing research and creative thinking at the university. Last but not the least, I would like to appreciate my colleagues in the Department of Social Sciences and Humanities and 4 other departments, English and Modern Languages, Media Studies, Law and Global Studies and Governance, / at IUB, for their commitment and relentless effort in organizing this conference. I would also like to record our appreciation and gratitude for our administrative staff for providing logistic and all other support to us. With these few words, I conclude here. Thank you so very much for your patient hearing, and I wish you a day-long happy and productive stay with us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are at the very end of today's inaugural program. Just one friendly gesture. Now we will be giving our guests crest from the conference organizing committee. The Vice Chancellor is going to present the crest to Honorable Minister M.A. Mannan. Sir. The Chairman, Board of Trustee, he will present the crest to UNHCR representative. Thank you, sir. And our Dean Slash will be presenting the crest to another special guest, EU Union country representative in Bangladesh. Thank you, sir. Excuse me, আপনি একটা ছবি সবার সুন্দর করে তোমরা তাহলে So, dear guests, please have your lunch at room number 4044, lift button 3. You have your lunch, and next we'll start our session at 2:30 sharp. Thank you.